Hi everyone. Excuse me, my voice could give up very easily today. Jet lag and everything else coming in from Houston. Just to give you a little bit of background before I start. My background for the last 14 years has been in the implementation of supplier performance management programs within the oil and gas industry. So if I get a little bit techy in terms of KPIs, that's where it's coming from. Worked with the majority of the various different operators over the last 12, 14 years. More recently I've taken up, essentially got involved with PIDX, and I seen the need for developing standardized terminology within the oil and gas industry for those KPIs, and that's what I'm going to be taking you through today. So I'm going to give you an overview of PIDX, why there's a need for a PIDX Supplier KPI Standard, look at some of the challenges, the solution, the benefits of the standard, and the update and next steps and where we are, and whoever wants to get involved, then I'll leave my details at the end. PIDX, you've all got brochures there. It covers off the main areas of PIDX, and I know David talked a little bit in his presentation there about standards and the need for standards and taxonomies and the 9 modifiers and everything needed. So PIDX is essentially an e-business standards body that guides and develops standards for the oil and gas industry. Everything from e-commerce, e-invoicing, supply chain, master data management, through to product classifications. PIDX been in business since 1987, so coming up to 25 odd years, and there are no competing open standards within the industry. The PIDX ones are the only ones in this area. So everything from standards and guidelines, business messages, business processes, catalog and classifications, work groups to develop those standards, and regular reporting work groups. Some of the members, and we haven't got all of the logos on the board here, but likes of BP, Baker, Schlumberger, ConocoPhillips, Weatherford, Deriva, goes on and on, but a vast majority of all the service companies and operators are members, as well as other IT companies. So I'm going to talk to you today about the Supplier KPI project, look at some of the key drivers to why we need it. But an interesting fact that I came across was that there are now more KPIs out there than there are people in Aberdeen. So that gives you a sort of sense of a scale. And as Billy Connolly would put it, people are going off in their wee secret groups and developing little secret KPIs of their own, you know, so that's going to add to that army of little KPI folk. The main reason for developing the standard was twofold. Over the last 10 years I've been talking to many operators and many service companies, and the terminology is not transferable between, or is not common across all the operators and service companies. So as well as being overloaded with supplier scorecards, the service companies were just getting very annoyed that there was no standard out there. So one man's version of a KPI was not the same as, or one operator's version of the KPI terminology was not the same as the other. So the key drivers: scorecard overload, cost savings associated with completing out scorecards. We need better data accuracy, improved data QA, QC, and also the scorecard overload impact on working conditions. So the wins that we get when we implement it: we get standardized KPI terminology, we get industry recognized KPIs, we get better QPRs, we get cost savings for the service company in terms of the data, time spent loading the data, and more accurate data for the operators. So currently we have 35 companies ranging from service companies and operators who are involved in the Supplier KPI work group and trying to define that KPI data dictionary that will be open to all operators and service companies within the industry. So looking at some of the key KPIs, I know that Rick had mentioned some and Keith had mentioned some early on, the need for importance for KPIs. like turnover, service levels, MTBD. I'm going to look at some of the other ones, like the cost, spend overruns, non-productive time, job quality, product quality, late delivery, staff turnarounds, days that invoices are outstanding, and so on. Those KPIs are ambiguous in terms of their makeup as to what the definitions and correct definitions are. OSHA in the States give great definitions for total recordable incidents rates and those health and safety KPIs. But outside of that, there's ambiguity across the KPIs used within the industry. Give you a little example, non-productive time. Anybody know what it means? I hope. Sorry? Right. Non-productive time is a KPI that is commonly used within the industry, but it's ambiguous in that the service company's definition of non-productive time differs significantly from the operators. I mean, because there's all sorts of clawbacks and contracts and so on. So the start and stop of non-productive time is a very contentious area. To put it into very layman terms, like there's so many different definitions out there between the operators that whenever a person moves from one operator to the other operator, they take their definitions with them, and that leads to further confusion. And you've got global account managers that are working in the industry. Again, they move between one service company to another, and that's even again confusion within the industry. You sit down and then try and have a reasonable quarterly performance review with those with the service companies, and it's arguing over the actual makeup of and definition of the KPI rather than looking at the data and making a successful QPR meeting. So that's what we're trying to target. To put it in a funny context, Paddy the Irishman's definition of non-productive time is time spent outside of the pub. But Paddy's wife's Mary, her definition of non-productive time is time spent with Paddy in bed whenever he comes back from the pub. So various different makeups and definitions. And again, days sales outstanding, or as they call it in the States, and days invoices outstanding. I mean, what's the start point? Is the start point when you receive the invoice? Is the start point when the actual the invoice date? So there again, like you could have DSOs of 60, 90 days, or you could have DSOs when the invoice was actually received or taken out of the operator's drawer and logged into the ERP system. So it needs to be correct terminology and definitions, and that's what we're working to create that data dictionary. Some of the challenges that we're faced with, again, the workload, millions of dollars put into completing out scorecards. The operator challenges is that the data validation that's gathered. The industry challenges, I'm not going to list all of these, but the industry challenges is that there's no standardization of KPI terminology between the operators and different naming conventions. All of you would have seen something like this. It's a scorecard where you're collecting HSE data, innovation data, people data, like the number of stop cards, the number of near misses, the number of recordable illnesses, number of man hours worked. All of that data gathered is then rolled up, submitted through for approval, either in Excel or a work flow system, and then approved and reviewed and made available for reporting. That's all nonsense if we don't have the right makeup on those KPI definitions, because you'll be sitting arguing over essentially what was MPT, what was a recordable illness. So there needs to be definition around that. So at the minute, most of the hard work has been done by the suppliers and the service companies, with the operators reviewing the actual data, and then the actual reports being generated at the outset. What we're looking at is twofold. Is number one, within PIDX, to create the data dictionary, to make that available after input from all operators and all service companies, get that standardized, and then move on to the next phase, which is the automated transmission of the data between the actual service companies and the actual operators. that will rule out all of this need for double keying data into the service company system, and then again into operator scorecards. So that's like a phase 2 of the actual project. So the benefits, just to recap: common industry KPI terminology, more productive quarterly performance reviews, reduced costs of data entry, increased data accuracy, mitigation of risk brought about from inaccurate data, increased efficiencies, better scorecard compliance, reduced audit costs, and a focus now on improvement versus time-consuming data entry, and less operator-supplier disputes over data. What we've accomplished to date is we've had various different meetings with operators and service companies. We've had work group meetings. The last one was a couple of weeks ago in London. And there's US meetings, there's UK meetings, European meetings. We'll look at doing one in Aberdeen soon as well. But PIDX conference events. We've also established a very good work group on LinkedIn. For those of you who are members of LinkedIn, feel free to join in. But the obstacles that we have is getting the right people with the right level of responsibility, and the right people with the knowledge that know KPIs. Not the guys that have their own little secret KPIs that they want to keep hidden away in safes and not share with the industry. There's no point in cloning a KPI and creating your own version of it and thinking you've got a competitive advantage by using that, because all you're doing is creating confusion within your supply base and service base. So we need to get the right people around the table, and we've been very successful in that over the last number of months. Sorry, the last year. Our main focus is to focus on D&C, upstream area, and then move into downstream. So looking at all the upstream KPIs and category lines and service lines, and then move into downstream. Although downstream area is very proactive in this area and have already started building out the downstream data dictionary. So for the next 3 months, it's continuing to educate and meet with the various different companies that are interested in the KPI data dictionary, and to develop out the business cases that you can use internally for your own companies as to why why being involved with such a standard is appropriate. I know David mentioned earlier that standards and data dictionaries are important, but that you should maintain control over your own data dictionaries, and he's quite right in that respect. It's PIDX's view within this project to allow you to take those data dictionaries and add to it yourselves without essentially the need to be working off one PIDX only data dictionary. So for the next 6 months then, we're looking at finalizing the data dictionary and releasing that out across a number of category and product lines. And then for the second 6 months of 2012 is to engage with vendors that are interested in doing a pilot for the transmission of the actual data, as opposed to manually filling out thousands of scorecards at an average cost of $100 an hour. You know, you're into big amounts. We reckon that there's about 150 million of savings within the industry through a supplier KPI data dictionary and automated process at a minimum. And that's just based on numbers of being 20 operators and 20 service companies following that. So it's a lot bigger if you take it in the scale of the actual magnitude of the amount of service companies and operators out there. So any questions at all, feel free to ask. I'll leave my business cards just there on the table, that if anyone wants to lift them. And Carol, I know that Tom did mention about a workshop this afternoon. I'm not sure, is that still happening? Is there people registered for that, or what way?
Daryl has to get a flight to Glasgow this evening. He's quite keen to rush off. We didn't know how many people were interested in staying, so I guess maybe...
I'm happy to stay on. I just need to be until about 3:30. So if there is people that are interested, by all means, I'll be about.
It was a question. The answer The answer will probably lead us to whether I attend the workshop or not. How's this? Is this competing or working alongside first point assessment?
It's actually working alongside. I have met with Alistair and FPAL, and this is to devise the actual definitions and standards for the KPI terminology. So FPAL, Alistair gave me his commitment that essentially that they could use that as well. So IT vendors, like you've got a number of the main vendors that are in the SPM space, SAP, Ariba, FPAL, BizNet, and so on. So it's the vendors coming together as well, because ultimately they're the ones that maintain the systems that this data goes into. So yeah, I have met with Alistair.
So it's not because I mean I spend an enormous amount of time when everyone that comes and wants to sell you a system, I say, look, we've invested years getting FPAL as an industry standard. I want your KPIs to. I don't want to have your KPIs that I've then got a horseshoe into FPAL. Design something that I can just plug straight in and use FPAL.
Yeah,
So
this is because FPAL are participants, they're actually going to get the data dictionary, and how many of those KPIs they want to use, it's entirely up to FPAL. So everybody contributing, and again, there are so many KPIs out there at the moment that we're not going to try and put definitions around them all. We're going to put definitions around the major ones, and then come up with a one-page fact sheet on each of the KPIs and work from there. So I have a load of different presentation material that I'm happy to email on to anybody that's interested across a range of different KPI product lines, whether it be health and safety, whether it be cost, whether it be upstream, downstream, and all we're looking for is input from the operators and the service companies and IT companies to essentially devise and create the KPI data dictionary as a first goal.
What kind of appetite? I guess you need a critical mass of people, Daryl. So
yeah.
Is there a show of hands? Anyone who wishes to attend? So I guess Daryl knows what his plans are.
Happy to. Yeah, we can have a chat. Yeah, I mean, anybody else, just lift a card, and I'm happy to email you on where we are, and it's open to anybody to participate. You don't need to be a PIDX member to join the work group, so any company can join in and contribute, especially if you're in supply chain and KPI land within that.
Okay,
thank you.
Great.
Cheers, Tom.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you, so well done, guys. I think we've got ourselves to time here. So if you've got your raffle ticket to hand, that Kindle, it's getting close to Christmas. A good rummel about here. I hope I don't pick my one. That'll be really embarrassing. Okay, so, and oops, it is number 345.
345.
And if you're not in the room, 345, is this, there we go, all right. Congratulations. So it just falls to me, I think, to just a couple of closing words. I think we heard a lot mentioned at the start about the challenges this basin faces, and but Alan, the poor staff, are telling us all about the situation, how it's really just going to get more acute in every sense, and you layer on top the renewables and the decommissioning challenges. So the industry as a whole just needs to basically raise its game here, I think. I mean, supply chain has been seen to be part of the solution, but it's kind of got to reinvent itself in a way, and think, and just get more innovative about the solutions. And we had some great ideas and thoughts today about how that might articulate itself into the industry. So supply chain, mission critical clearly, but let's raise the game and get those solutions, and the challenges of the landscape that many of the presenters articulated need to be addressed. A lot of information about the data, just not about the accuracy, just the basic quality of the data. And I think it was also important to hear from Daryl about the need to just get some commonality around the KPIs, because I think we could all empathise with the challenge of all those 1,000 variations on a theme there. So I did ask everyone at the start maybe just to reflect on your industry, reflect on your job, reflect on your company, put your feet up, look out the window. Time to get your feet off the desk now, get back to the day job shortly, and put some of that thoughts into practice. But in closing, I'd like to thank Finding Petroleum again, obviously the sponsors, you guys, the delegates, for coming along, but especially if you could join me in thanking all our speakers for some great presentations today. Thank you.
We'll have one more clap for Mr. Smith for the fine chairing of the session. So the lunch is outside on the right. I hope you're all going to join us, and hopefully we'll see you at another supply chain event next year. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Are you on LinkedIn as well, Dennis? Are you on LinkedIn?